Hi, boys. Let's recap UFC 324 here on the NPC Fights channel. And the first fight I want to talk about on this card, Perez versus Johnson, made me look pretty dumb. Johnson got his ass absolutely kicked. Perez put on a show in that one. That really was a brutal beatdown from Perez. That was very impressive striking clearly another level above Johnson. Although it wasn't the only time on this card we saw a fighter in Johnson, an outside fighter, struggling to get into range. A big part of why Sean O'Malley lost the co-main event was because of his struggle to get into range. Charles Johnson had a nightmare trying to get into range in this fight, getting pieced up by Perez in his efforts to get inside. And it saw him just brutally knocked down twice. And I don't think I think he was knocked down twice, and he was basically finished on his feet the third time. So I don't believe Perez would have been credited with a third knockdown, but he knocked him down twice and then finished him after. So I believe there were two knockdowns and then the KO. But Johnson got turned around and with some rather cinematic shots from Perez. I was very impressed by Perez's striking in this one. Krylov versus Bukauskas. Bukauskas really also got, this was also an ass kicking, where I believe that Bukauskas' size and his youth would make the difference, but Krylov ultimately had the more lethal striking, clearly some veteran know-how to higher IQ. Look at the difference in body strikes and leg strikes, as well as takedowns and control. Krylov did all the little things, and Bukauskas didn't, and ultimately Krylov landed a big shot with 3 seconds left. It was an odd stoppage, but it was definitely, I feel like a correct stoppage, or at least a correct stoppage that you'll see most UFC, most MMA refs make. He really got slumped by a shot from Krylov, so it makes sense that he called it off even with 3 seconds. It looked like he was out for a second. And if you go out for a brief second in MMA, they usually do call the fight, especially if you've already been taking significant damage and it's near the end. Bukauskas didn't stick to whatever game plan he was supposed to have here. He should have committed to the legs. He should have committed to the body. I noticed that the entire fight that he wasn't doing that. And it's always frustrating when at the highest level of the sport, a fighter doesn't make very basic adjustments like that. But it could also be a matter of, you get late into the fight, you haven't started the commitment to the body or the legs, not late, like maybe halfway into the fight. If you're halfway into the fight, you haven't started committing to the body or the legs, is it not kind of too late, especially if you're down, and you can't blame a guy for headhunting? But, either way, especially you can't blame a guy with a longer reach for headhunting. But either way, I think Krylov showed his veteran know-how and honestly his slightly superior hands, which I wasn't aware of. But that's why this was a good matchup, I think. Bukauskas was bigger, longer, rangier, taller, but Krylov more veteran, better hands, and that ultimately made the difference with the round 3 KO here for Krylov. Gautier beat Pulyaev. It wasn't quite the show we've seen from Gautier in most of his fights, but it probably is a little bit of a level up, especially in terms of technicality here with Pulyaev as an opponent for Gautier, who's pretty much bowled over everybody he's fought so far in the UFC. But Gautier proved that his striking is still at an extremely high level, and his finishing is still at an extremely high level, even if he didn't get a finish here. He's extremely elite power for a middleweight, in addition to his obviously freakish build and athleticism. So still keep an eye out for Atiba Gautier. There's no reason not to, this didn't tamper my expectations at all. I'm willing to give fighters a little bit of room for error, especially as long as they're still winning over, talented Russian fighters like Pulyaev. There's not really even that much to say about Umar versus Figueiredo. This fight kind of went exactly the way I think we all thought it would. I'm sorry, I honestly have nothing else to say. If you guys are really into Dagestani wrestling and fighters of that style, I'm sure there's a comprehensive breakdown of Umar's performance somewhere out there on YouTube for you guys, but I'm honestly going to skip this one. I honestly didn't pay that much attention to it while it was happening, but every time I looked up at the fight, Umar was in top control like most Umar fights, so yeah. Arnold Allan versus Gene Silva, and Gene Silva's kind of a cringe lord, but I mean, he brought the energy in this fight, man. You can't blame him. He brought the energy. He brought the energy that the smaller fighter has to bring. But there was a lot of great action from both fighters. There was some really great striking exchanges in this fight. Silva was the only guy who landed any takedowns, and those were really deciding factors for the 2 rounds that he won, in my opinion. I don't even think it's to the point where the takedowns won him the fight, because I still think Silva was more impressive on the feet. It wasn't like the main event where, Gaethje, when he hit Pimblett, it was just like he was hitting Pimblett in a different way than Pimblett was hitting him. That wasn't really the case in this fight. These guys were both able to tag each other. Silva got hit with some pretty mean shots. But Silva definitely landed the bigger shots, and he landed the bigger shots more consistently, and he also managed to get some takedowns even if he struggled for control. But that was part of what made this fight entertaining, is that when Silva got the takedown, Allan was very able to reverse him, and the fight was very quickly back on the feet and back to trading. It was a very entertaining MMA fight. And it's honestly unfortunate that Gene Silva, as cringy as he is, came out on top, because that weird thing where he's screaming at the belt and then holding it like a baby. It's like, wait, if you're gonna do that, at least wait till you're in a title fight. But an Arnold Allen win is great. Let's see if Gene Silva has a future in the heavyweight division as a title contender. He definitely proved that he can come out on top of a high level featherweight scrap though in the UFC, and that's definitely worth something here on a main card. And Natalia Silva was very impressive to me. I thought that Rose Namajunas was just going to be able to, when in doubt, take this to the ground, but look right there at the 1 out of 5 takedowns. Not so. And Natalia Silva really, really impressed me with the striking. And there was some really impressive striking landed in this fight, but it's much more impressive to see from Natalia Silva, who doesn't quite have the UFC mileage on her that Rose Namajunas does, even though she has more professional fights than Namajunas. She's much younger, and she fought on the Brazilian circuit where fighters just fight a lot more and accumulate more fights. Rose Namajunas has been fighting most of her career in the UFC. And it's part of why, she has those 8 losses on her record. Those are, 8 much higher level losses than most women's MMA fighters have. Much higher level losses than Natalia Silva's 5 losses. But Natalia Silva, I think, proved that she's definitely at a higher level than Rose Namajunas right now, and is going to be in the title consideration in the future, especially with her striking. Although I suspect that in the women's flyweight division, in the title picture, her grappling is going to get significantly tested up at the championship level in the future. So we'll see what the future holds for Natalia Silva. But beating a UFC veteran and a pretty much perennial contender in Rose Namajunas is a big step up for Natalia Silva and a big step forward in her career. And poor Derek Lewis, man, that was not a good showing for Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis's corner was talking to him after the first round. His corner sounded like a college professor. He was like, "Here's exactly what you're gonna have to do, and you better listen to me, and you better do it." But Derek Lewis, he was not looking great in this fight. He was looking 40 years old, unfortunately. Slower than he wanted to be. He looked like he wanted to hit. He looked like he wanted to be able to throw his hands out there faster than he could. And that Waldo Cortes-Acosta had, the speed that Derek Lewis longed for, essentially. It could just be a case that Waldo Cortes-Acosta is just faster than Derek Lewis in a vacuum, and we've kind of been underestimating Waldo Cortes-Acosta's speed for a heavyweight. That could be true, or it could be that Derek Lewis is slowing down as he gets older. And the sheer lack of punch accuracy, I think, speaks to that from Derek Lewis. And the eye test also. He truly looked slow. His corner after that first round told him to try to go a little more direct, go for the jab, go for the straights over the hooks. But the reason why Derek Lewis was looking for hooks and also looking for big overhands is that I don't think he thought he could get anything sort of in those center lanes at all with how fast Waldo Cortes-Acosta was. If you guys watch boxing and you remember the Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford fight, late in that fight, Crawford was so much faster than Spence by the end of that fight, as Spence got tired and had been knocked down, that he was actually able to just jab simultaneously with Spence. He was so much faster than Spence in those central lanes that when Spence would throw a jab, Crawford would throw one back so fast that they would just end up jabbing simultaneously. That's how much faster Crawford was. That's how fast Crawford was able to react to Spence's slower speed. I think that's what would have happened to Derek Lewis here, or something close to it. If he would have thrown anything up those middle lanes, Acosta would have just popped him back, and he didn't want that to happen because Acosta was hitting him with a really fast jab, really consistently. I mean, look right there, 46 out of 64. If you're getting hit with that level of accuracy, man, get me out of here. So it was not a fun night for Derek Lewis, and unfortunately, this might be the end for Derek Lewis at the top level of the heavyweight division, especially when it comes to, like, people were saying if he won this fight that he could get a title shot, and now that seems pretty far from reality. There'd have to be something special would have to happen for Derek Lewis, I think, to make that happen here. Even though it's slightly more possible at the higher ages at heavyweight, I believe, to make a run of it, but not encouraging signs. He looked very slow. He looked 40. He looked his age. He looked like a 40-year-old in there against a much younger, much faster man. And Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong. This was a disgusting decision. Song Yadong pretty blatantly won this fight. Song Yadong won this fight 2 rounds to 1. That just is what it is. Song Yadong won the first 2 rounds of this fight. There were no 10-8 rounds. So going into the 3rd round, the fight was 20-18. Sean O'Malley won the 3rd round. He won the 3rd round very convincingly, but he didn't win the 1st round and he didn't win the 2nd round. So the final score of the fight after the 3rd round, I'm saying this like I'm explaining it to a 5-year-old for a reason, should be 29-28. Song Yadong, not 29-28 Sean O'Malley, because Song Yadong won the first 2 rounds of the fight and Sean O'Malley won the 3rd. And you could argue that, it's the co-main event of what would have been a pay-per-view, a numbered UFC. It should be a 5-rounder. And if it was a 5-rounder, Sean O'Malley would have won. Shut up. That's not how we score fights. It's a 3-round fight. As an educated UFC fan, if you know who Song Yadong is and you know how good Song Yadong is, and you know that Sean O'Malley is a former bantamweight champion, has beat Petr Yan, albeit by split decision, also in a 3-round fight, by the way, and you know that at such a high level with 2 such high-level fighters, 3-round decisions can be sketchy. It's really hard to judge a fight off 3 rounds. It's the reason why I just said if it was a 5-round fight, I think O'Malley would have won, because in the 3rd round, it seemed like O'Malley was beginning to take control of the fight. Yadong didn't necessarily have control of the fight in the first 2 rounds. He was keeping O'Malley away. He was really dictating the tempo of the fight and forcing O'Malley to throw 1-2s and, straight punches instead of combinations. Keeping him at distance strikes, limiting him in the pocket, trying to stop his combinations at the first punch. And all of those things delayed the time where O'Malley was able to really start to find his combinations and his proper distance to strike to the 3rd round, where he really started to dominate the fight and where you saw all that damage on Song Yadong. Because the truth is also, if you were to score this fight off damage, which thankfully they don't, yeah, the scorecards are correct. Sean O'Malley won. Song Yadong looked beat up. He was bloody by the 3rd round because Sean O'Malley was, popping him with 1-2s in the pocket by the 3rd round and was landing some really impressive combinations and definitely won the 3rd round. But that was the only round of the fight that he won. So how did he win the fight? And if you're an educated UFC fan, like I said, you know that a 3-round fight against a high-level fighter like Song Yadong, and especially a loss, and if this fight was a loss, it might have been a 2-1 split decision even, especially a split decision loss, but a loss in a 3-round fight to a guy like Song Yadong, it isn't the most brutal thing in the world, and you can also just tie it in with the 2 losses to Merab. He just lost 2 fights to Merab. He lost 2 fights at the highest level, and he comes in here against a really tough, high-level, technically gifted opposition who would be able to neutralize his tools for the first couple rounds of a 3-round affair. And that's what happened. It's a tough go for Sean O'Malley, but back to the drawing board. You're still 18-4. You're still, a marketable fighter in the UFC. I don't understand why we have to have this honestly cooked decision. Because they want the Petr Yan rematch. Thank goodness Petr Yan is the bantamweight champion. I love that Petr Yan is the bantamweight champion. But they want to make a Sean O'Malley versus Petr Yan rematch after Sean O'Malley won the first fight. And I'd love to see a 5-round fight. It would be a brutal, pugilistic affair. It wouldn't go to the ground at all. 2 of the best strikers, 2 of the best boxers in the UFC bantamweight division. And it's a fight I'm, of course, looking forward to, but like this. And the thing that really sucks about it is that I don't know that Song Yadong is ever going to get a rematch. I mean, if O'Malley loses, are people going to demand a Song Yadong rematch, or is there going to be something else? Where is the big vocal fan base of Song Yadong fans who are going to come out and say, hey, this guy deserves a rematch? Respectfully, I'm sure he has a large fan base in China. Those people aren't on American social media, literally, right? There is not going to be pressure on the UFC from anybody in the American market to make a Song Yadong fight in the future. And I think that's part of why he just got blatantly robbed here. And who knows? Watch out for that. There might be something about the fact that there's no more pay-per-views, that there's ads on this Paramount Plus deal. Doesn't it feel like it's just going to make it a little bit more likely for the UFC to just do shit like this, do little things like this? Not that the UFC hasn't been accused of this before with O'Malley, even with Sean O'Malley, but just favoring certain fighters and decisions. But watch out for that in this new era of the UFC, because this makes me very, very wary. You don't have to know a lot about MMA or about what you're watching to score that fight. Song Yadong won the first 2 rounds. Sean O'Malley won round 3. You could even argue that in the spirit of total damage of the fight, Sean O'Malley won. I mean, look at the total strikes. It looks like Sean O'Malley won from the total strikes, to be honest with you. Not from the takedowns combined with the total strikes, but from the total strike percentages, 67 out of 111. I mean, that's pretty great accuracy, and I'd believe it. Sean O'Malley was very accurate in this fight. But just on the scoring, Song Yadong won 2-1. That's just the way it is. You gotta score the fight the way it actually happened. I'm sorry. It's for the sake of the sport, for the sake of the sport being a sport. Please score the fight correctly next time. Just because the guy has multicolored hair and colorful tattoos, like the fight isn't gonna sell when it's free. Like, come on, man. And finally, Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett. And this was just a banger. This was just a banger. I mean, okay, it wasn't just a banger, but it proved Paddy Pimblett's level, to me, at least right now. Explosive, but he can have that explosivity taken away from him by a fighter with equal explosivity. You're talking about Justin the Highlight Gaethje. You're talking about a guy with lightning hands, explosive hands, and we just saw it for 25 minutes. Justin Gaethje just went out there and kicked ass for 25 minutes. Like I said, if Paddy Pimblett was going to win this fight, he was going to have to use his explosiveness and jump on Gaethje early and dominate the early part of the fight and do the majority of his accumulative damage actually early and then probably a little also late in the fight if he wanted to win. Utilize your explosiveness early in the fight. Utilize your explosiveness late in the fight to capitalize on the tiredness of the other fighter. That would have been Paddy Pimblett's game plan to win. Instead, Justin Gaethje put his foot on the gas first. Justin Gaethje came out and won the early rounds. The only round in this fight that Pimblett won. Well, he did win the late round because he was stressed and down and had to win that round and had to exchange. And I would argue even then you maybe could give that round to Gaethje. Actually, looking at the scorecards now, 2 of the judges did. I didn't. But the only round of this fight that Pimblett actually won was the 3rd round, which is the round that Gaethje essentially took off. I sort of recognized that was happening too. Gaethje really had Paddy hurt at the end of round 2. He could have piled on the pressure. Instead, again, just veteranosity from Gaethje, realizing he has 15 minutes, a whole regular UFC fight of time left. He just takes that third round off. Also, to gather information to see what kind of offense Paddy was going to offer back. And Paddy did some damaging work in that round, but nothing that really threatened Gaethje. And Gaethje was never really threatened with a finish in this fight in the same way that Paddy Pimblett was constantly running around. This was an ass-kicking, in a way, delivered to Paddy Pimblett, who proved what he said. Scousers don't get knocked out. I don't know what it's going to take to knock Paddy Pimblett out, but the problem is we live in reality. Paddy Pimblett just took a lot more damage than he'd probably want to. He's lucky that a lot more of it was to the body than to the head. It says here more head strikes were landed on Gaethje than on Pimblett, but Paddy was really headhunting in this fight and honestly doing a pretty good job of headhunting as well. But Gaethje was really attacking the body more and wearing Paddy out more. And Paddy's got long arms. He can commit to the body attack. I can't imagine he attacks the body poorly. But he was really headhunting in this fight, partially because he was down for most of this fight. And there was a lot of slipping and sliding in this fight, guys losing their feet. But it was also an extremely intense fight. These guys really wanted to damage each other. They really wanted to finish each other. And unfortunately, Paddy was the only one who was ever close to getting finished. That was another very impressive performance by Justin Gaethje. And again, it really shows Paddy's level very clearly because Justin Gaethje has only lost to fighters that are clearly above Paddy Pimblett's level, or people that most fans would consider above Paddy Pimblett's level. And you're not going to see anybody argue that Paddy is on that level after this fight. And I think, it's a nice course setter for Paddy Pimblett, to be honest with you. His career so far has looked a bit like a boxer's career in that he hasn't really faced any, title level opposition before getting to the title level. It does seem a bit manufactured, and you can tell that from the record. 23-4, albeit he fought in a very challenging promotion over in the UK, Cage Warriors. So I haven't lost all of my faith in Paddy, but he needs to learn how to be more than just that blitzing fighter, especially because Justin Gaethje has proved that up here at the championship level, when there's belts on the line, the fighters blitz all the time. There are fighters who can just blitz for 5 rounds, or at least selectively blitz like Gaethje. And, you know, Paddy Pimblett has not proved his ability to hang with guys like this. He hasn't proved his ability to hang with a guy like Max Holloway. I don't think he'd beat somebody like that. You know, he's got to keep the hands, and he's got to keep the hands consistent. And part of that is being able to apply pressure to the body, being able to learn how to control guys who are going to relentlessly brawl with you, guys who want to relentlessly get inside. Because the truth is, those wrestlers, they have to get inside to take you down. It's obviously not the same as inside fighting. It's not the same as clinching. But he has to do a better job dealing in general with guys who are trying to close the space with that relentless level of consistency. He needs to accept his role as, you know, a long-armed, tall lightweight as an outside fighter. And he was not trying to outside fight in this fight. He was trying to brawl, and I think that's something that people miss here. It's not that he didn't fight like the rangier fighter, he did, but he didn't fight like a proper outside fighter. He wanted to stand, he wanted to exchange, he wanted to brawl, he wanted to entertain people. This was a UFC title fight against the BMF Justin Gaethje. He wanted to put on a show. And I think that in the future, if Paddy Pimblett wants to be a champ, he's going to have to work on more tempo dictation and more using his reach, especially if he wants to be a champion here at lightweight, here at, you know, a weight class that he's big for, that he can, I think, eventually in his frame be a dominant champion in, if he can develop his game. But that's a really big question mark, because there's a lot of big question marks for Paddy Pimblett, especially also defensively. So those are my thoughts on UFC 324. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree with me on the O'Malley Song Yadong fight? Do you agree with me that Song Yadong won that 2-1? Do you guys think there's any future for Derek Lewis after that performance, or do you think it was just a bad night? Do you think he's washed up? Do you think he's over the hill? And give me any thoughts on Gaethje versus Pimblett as well. And I will see you next for Shakur Stevenson versus Teofimo Lopez. That's a big fight coming up in boxing this weekend at the Ring 6 card. I believe at Madison Square Garden in my hometown of New York City. So I'm definitely going to be covering that, hopefully with 2, maybe even 3 videos. I might do an initial thoughts video, a preview video, and then a review video after the fight. But I'm also going to keep streaming gaming content, been doing some gaming content over on the main channel. This is probably going to be the first fight video that I only release here on NPC Fights. The last video didn't get that many views on the main channel. I may just take it down from the main channel. It's only got like 10 views. It's got way more views over here on the fight channel. If you haven't seen that video yet, watch that one too. See how many of these fights I got wrong. I kind of embarrassed myself with a couple of them. But I basically got the main event right. I said the main event. I didn't pick the main event, but I said 55-45 Gaethje. I was ultimately proven correct. I actually did get O'Malley versus Yadong right by accident. I picked O'Malley, but I don't think I actually got that one right. And I picked Cortes-Acosta over Derek Lewis. So I mean, I guess I went 3 for 3. I guess. All right, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out, and stay tuned for more combat sports content.